Hi, welcome to The State Room, a podcast dedicated to focusing on the issues that are most important here in Arizona that define the future of Arizona public policy. I'm your host, Scot Mussi. Today's episode of State Room, we're going to be discussing topics that have been a topic that's been dominating the news, not just here locally, but nationally. It's actually an issue that likely voters here in Arizona that may have a say on in November in the form of a ballot initiative. And what I'm talking about are ESAs, or school choice in general here in Arizona. And so for today's episode of the State Room, I've invited Jenna Bentley, Vice President of Government Affairs. Is that right? Vice President?
Director of Government Affairs.
Director of Government Affairs.
Take
the promotion?
The promotion for sure.
Okay. For today, you'll be director, but in my mind, you'll always be vice president of Government Affairs at the Goldwater Institute, handles most of their public policy and advocacy work at the legislature, and is one of the, I would say, experts on school choice and the ESA program here in Arizona. Jenna, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start at the beginning here, because when we talk about school choice and even ESAs, most people in reality aren't actually that familiar with what even an ESA is or what it does, how it even interrelates with the school choice programs here in the state. And so could you take a minute to explain what is an ESA? How does a parent or a child use an ESA to go to school or pick a school here in Arizona?
Sure. So to clarify, ESAs, also known as empowerment scholarship accounts or savings accounts, are not new in Arizona. We've actually had them for over a decade. What has changed is who has been eligible to receive these accounts. But essentially, what it is a parent can apply for the ESA program, they can get placed on it, and then they receive a portion of their taxes that they pay back that they can then use for whatever educational option best suits their child. So if that's a private school, homeschool, if they want to do like cottage school programs, that's the type of thing that parents can use. And really where this came from is, districts. There are some good districts, there are some not so good districts, but just because a kid is in a public school, that doesn't mean that that's the right option for them, especially when you look at, kids in most states, especially Arizona, they're placed in a district based on their zip code. And that might not be a good fit for them for a variety of reasons. Maybe the teachers aren't great, they're having, issues with other students, or it's just a low performing school. And so school choice, and especially the ESA program, just empowers parents to be able to put their kids using their own tax dollars into the educational opportunity that best suits their needs.
How much is an ESA? How much does a parent get if they're wanting to enroll in, if they want to take advantage of this and find a school that best suits their child? How much do they get in this type of an account?
Yeah, the average ESA is $7,400. Now, there are some scenarios where it could be more. Students that have special needs, so that was the original category of the program, they can receive higher amounts, but the average student is receiving approximately $7,400.
Okay. So what parents are eligible, or what children are eligible for an ESA in Arizona?
Now, a couple years ago, we expanded it, so it's universal. Every kid who is here in Arizona is now eligible to be a student on the ESA program.
Okay, so how popular is this? How popular has the program become? When was it expanded? Was it in 2022, correct?
2022 is when the universal expansion took place. Prior to that, we had roughly about 50,000 kids on the ESA program, noting that most of those were special needs kids because it was limited categories. Once we opened it up to universal eligibility, now we just broke over 100,000 kids that are currently on the program.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, tremendous success.
100,000.
Yes.
How many kids are in Arizona that are would be eligible, or are in the K-12 that are in the K-12 age group?
All of them.
All of them. No, how many total? Like in Arizona, how many students do we have in Arizona?
Oh,
total?
gosh. Actually, I don't know that number off the top of my head, but all of the kids here would be eligible for an ESA scholarship.
So we have this program. It was made universal. Everybody can participate. We have over 100,000 kids in the program. That sounds like a huge success.
It has been. And Arizona has really, we pioneered kind of the notion of school choice. We developed, charter schools, the STO program. Then we, developed ESAs. And so, we've really been leading the nation. And I think our success here, one of the best measures of success is hearing from the ESA parents themselves. Mm-hmm. They all have really, really just incredible and unique stories about how this program has helped their kids.
Is there a lot of low-income families, minority families that use the program?
For sure. There's kind of this misnomer that this only helps like the rich kids attend Brophy. And that is absolutely not true. As we previously mentioned, the average ESA amount is $7,400. The average private school tuition in Arizona is anywhere between $5,000 and $8,000. So this can, in most situations, either fully or almost completely cover tuition at any private school in Arizona. And that's huge, for kids who, are coming from lower income families. This makes that option available to them.
Out of curiosity, you said that you get around, is it $7,500?
$7,400.
$7,400. How much does a district school get on average in Arizona on K-12 fund? Like if you wanted to go, if that parent ended up just sending their kid to their local district school, on average, how much does that district school get to pay for that kid's education?
It costs the Arizona taxpayer approximately $16,000 per district school. So the ESA program, roughly about half of that. And one important thing to note that
if that parent then no longer said, I'm not going to send that kid to this private school, they changed their mind and sent him back to the district school, taxpayers would be on the hook for almost doubled or more than doubled.
Correct.
What they're currently paying as far as sending the kid to a private school or whatever alternative programming that they decided for their child.
Yes. That's another misnomer of the program is critics say that this is bankrupting the state. It's actually saving the state money. I mean, those are dollars right there, right? Like it's either $7,400 through the ESA program to educate a child or $16,000 to educate them in a district setting.
Okay, so then what's the opposition to this? Because for years it's been debated, let's expand school choice, but then there's this grind of opposition. It always seems to be mainly driven from people that are either associated with or the unions themselves that represent teachers and others within the school districts. Is that still the primary opposition to ESAs? And what is their main arguments that they're using against the ESA program?
Yeah, that's definitely the driving source. We see a lot of material coming from the teachers union themselves, and then of course they funnel kind of misinformation down to their members. And, some of these teachers, I think they don't know, and they're trusting the information that their union or their district heads are getting them. But I can't tell you how many times we see articles, even from the local media, that are just completely false. Or they've kind of taken these mental gymnastics to make up these arguments about why the problem is the ESA program. Like every issue that has ever happened to a district, somehow they blame on ESAs, and so that's just not true.
The primary opposition then are from the groups that they don't want to see anybody else go anywhere else but a district school. So that's their motivation. And largely that's what I've seen too, is it's primarily driven by either the unions themselves or people that somehow financially benefit from the district school model that just want to make sure that the money goes into district schools, and that's the end of the story.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, so then you see now, and this has been coming up more recently, because you see before the attacks a lot of times would be, this is going to hurt district schools, but now it seems like it's pivoted to this debate over alleged fraud in the ESA program, and that's really been taking up a lot of the oxygen, even here locally, around the program on ESAs, to say ESAs has now become this program, this new program, this expanded program that is now riddled in fraud. In fact, there appears to be one particular reporter at a news outlet that spends all his time. He seems obsessive about this, and that's all he wants to talk about. Let's try to separate fact from fiction on this, because one of the arguments now being used by these same groups that clearly just don't like the program at all, but now that say that they're now really worried about fraud in the program and we got to fix it, is that they've made this claim now that there's up to 20% of fraud in the program. True or false? Is there 20% fraud in the ESA program?
Categorically false. So what ended up happening that kind of kicked this off is the Arizona Department of Education was releasing, because there's actually quite a bit of transparency around the ESA program. Mm-hmm. Parents, when they're making purchases, I mean, they have to have receipts, they have to categorize this. Everything has to be submitted. So we know exactly down to the penny where these dollars go. Would love to see that on the district level.
Every penny.
But that's a side point.
So you can go on and see every dollar spent through the program.
Yes.
Is there? Let's set aside, the ESA program. K-12s don't have this, right?
No.
Is there any government program?
No.
SNAP, like food stamps, or any other welfare programs? Is there any other program that has that level of transparency that we can go dollar for dollar and look at how the money's being spent?
I wish there was. I think we'd have a more responsible spending mechanism in the government, but no, we don't. And really, when we're looking at, fraud and misspending levels between the ESA program and other programs, I wish other programs like Medicare and Medicaid could set the example that ESAs have.
So they did these reviews or audits. They did an audit of the program. What was the actual finding? What's the actual numbers in the program for actual fraud that's been identified?
To clarify what the media had received. So ADE went through and they took a bunch of expenses that they had flagged as suspicious. So this was not this was not looking at every expenditure on the program. It was stuff that they had already said, this might warrant an additional look. And that's what they released to the media. Within that, this subsection of total purchases, they said, well, actually, it turns out that 20% of these purchases that we had already flagged as suspicious are misspending. Now, that was intellectually dishonest for them, the media, to say, oh, the entire program is riddled and it's 20% fraud. That's not true. It was just this subsection of flagged expenditures. And then when we actually looked at the number,
amount, like the total amount, so of that flagged, of that misspending, how much actual dollars are we talking about? Like, what did they have a number on that?
It's a small amount compared to like what the actual program is. And I can get you the exact dollar amount. I just don't have it off the top of my head.
Was it like 1%?
Well, what we ended up seeing is when we looked at all of the program, and there's one other thing that I will note here that always kind of gets globbed into the same thing. There's misspending and there's fraud. And the two are very separate and distinct things. So for example, parents, they have to buy off of a curriculum and they'll have a list of approved items with it. We had an example a couple years ago, a mom who had a kid who had dyslexia, bought this curriculum, and then she bought this supplemental graphing paper that went with it. Well, it turns out that wasn't actually part of the curriculum itself, and that was flagged as misspending. Now, the left ran with that and was like, they added that as, well, that's fraud. That's malicious fraud. Okay, that's not what that was. Then there's the actual fraud. So when we look at the program as a whole, we're looking at all of the transactions that went through. It was 2% misspending. Within that, 0.3% were actual fraud. And another
point. So it's less than 1%.
It's less than 1%. It's less than 0.5%. And I, to your point earlier, I actually pulled some of the numbers. Department of Education, they released a statement asking for a retraction from the local media to clarify the numbers that they were misrepresenting. And they pulled this and they said, food stamp fraud, 9.3%, unemployment insurance, 14.4% fraud, Medicaid, 7.4%. Then you look at the ESA program, and when you're actually looking at fraud numbers, 0.3%. I mean, this is just insane, but none of these other programs get the, kind of bastardization that the ESA program does.
Okay. And so, but even when they do find fraud, those parents, if they're actually engaging in fraud under the current rules of the program, they could potentially be investigated or prosecuted.
Referred to the AG's office. Okay. And I mean, we see that happen. If you are defrauding the program, then...
Is there anybody in the school choice world that supports the program that is against having these parents? Okay, so nobody's pro-fraud.
No one's
That's what I want to make sure.
pro-fraud.
There's nobody pro-fraud out there going, you know what, we want to go out here, these stories over buying laundry. Nobody's actually saying, oh, that's a good thing.
Correct. No one is saying that that's a good thing. And we already have statutes in place that say, you can't buy things like video game consoles and cell phones. And then also the ADE handbook. In the rules? That's in statute. Okay. That is state statute. The legislature already addressed some of them. And then the Board of Education, who produces the ESA handbook, has rules that further delineate what can and cannot be bought. So it's just categorically untrue when you hear opponents say, this is just an unrestricted, just free for all, parents can do whatever they want. That is absolutely not true. Parents have strict guidelines. They have to document every receipt, every penny that they spend. And the fact that we know about these cases of misspending shows that the system is working. I mean, transparent. It's flagging. Yes, it's transparent. The department has, kind of given the analogy. It's like when you file your taxes, the government's going to come and all of this stuff is subject to, review and audits. And if you have misspent anywhere, they're going to find it. And you're going to either have to pay back those funds, or if it's egregious, then you're going to get referred to the Attorney General's office. So if you do commit fraud, you can be liable for prosecution of AG. And even in the case of misspending, the parents can be notified. And what happens is they have to repay the funds. Yep. They have to repay the funds. Yep. Okay. In the case of K-12 or any K-12 districts, if somebody's found to be misspending funds, which is, again, they don't have that level of transparency. You already talked about that. They don't have to disclose that type of transparency. Are any school board members or administrators personally responsible with having to repay money that they misspend? No. And then, we see Isaacson School District literally bankrupted itself, couldn't sustain its own budget, and had to lay off school teachers. We saw, I think, there was a very controversial move by another school district to kind of buy them to help buy it out. Well, where are the criminal charges against, all the administrators from Isaacson? And there were accusations of fraud in that. So how much money was that in Isaacson? I think it was almost 20 million. Yes. It was a black hole. Insane number. We don't know. And we don't know what happened to it. We probably will never know, even if you do forensic audits, because school districts are allowed to just kind of use these bucket categories for expenses. We'll probably never know where all of those taxpayer dollars went. There will probably be, I can almost guarantee you, and you'll probably take this bet too, no full accountability to the taxpayers to where those dollars went. And I think in the case of Isaac Elementary, and that actually spilled into another school district, Tolleson, because Tolleson gave them a bailout that likely wasn't legal. They ended up loaning or granting money to the Isaac School District. But then Tolleson had their own problems, and it turned out that they were wanting to repurpose a voter-approved bond to build a big indoor dome football stadium that was never part of the bond itself. But apparently they wanted to spend $80 million on that. And that's a common occurrence. You see school districts play bait and switch with bonds and use money that was never even authorized. And unlike the ESA program, there's no mechanism for voters to go back and reclaw the bond money that gets misspent, or any of the administrators ever being personally responsible. So clearly there's a double standard. I don't think the unions or the district school advocates that are opposed to the ESA program care, but they're leveling this out and trying to say that the ESA program is the issue here when it comes to misspending and abuse and fraud. But the reality is a lot of that will be just academic, because it appears now that this policy debate that we're having is now going to spill into being a political battle in November in the form of a potential ballot initiative, because a new measure was introduced a couple months ago that is attempting to put, quote unquote, guardrails and accountability on the program. Jenna, can you tell us a little bit about this? Yeah, so this was filed by a group called Save Our Schools Arizona. They are notoriously anti-school choice. Even when the program was, sort of limited to just special needs kids, I mean, they have opposed ESAs specifically for a long, long time. And they were very unhappy when it got, turned into universal eligibility. So they have long since opposed the program, and they have filed what we view as a really dangerous and disruptive initiative. So how it works in Arizona, you go around and collect usually paid signatures. You know, the guys that stand outside the grocery store, they got the clipboard. They'll usually try to sweet talk you and tell you this is something great, like, oh, it's helping students, helping teachers. If enough people sign it, then it qualifies on the ballot and it appears as a proposition. And what this one is doing, I almost want to say that they have conceded that it would be probably political suicide for them to straight dismantle the program, because now we have over 100,000 kids that are on this. But now I think they've shifted tactics, and the thought is, well, we're just going to regulate it to death. And this is a huge step in this direction. If this passed, I think we would see close to half of the kids immediately get kicked off of the ESA program. And
50,000 kids could be kicked off the program.
Yep.
That sounds like a gutting to me, Jenna.
It's pretty close to it. And then I think it makes it really difficult for kids to get back on the program or subscribe. And, you know, they use this stuff of, oh, we're just using this. We're trying to thread the needle to stop fraud. And it's frustrating because it's like, well, one, we already have statutes preventing fraud is not allowed. And if it is, those people are prosecuted. So this is very much a Trojan horse. The real effort is to, you know, dismantle the program and just make it unworkable and unusable for kids in Arizona.
So they're trying to sell this as, oh, this was an accountability fraud program.
Yes.
But the same people that, I guess for years now, you know, unions, Save Our Schools, that have been opposing opposing ESAs, have argued that the program shouldn't exist or expand at all, are now claiming that they actually just want to make sure they have a high-functioning ESA program and it just needs some guardrails.
Yeah.
That's their pitch.
And the scary thing, too, is one of the provisions that they have in here says that, you know, if you're a private school and you're taking ESA kiddos, you now have to be subject to all of these testing standards that the districts that are failing the district. Our reading proficiency is abysmal. Our reading and math skills in our district schools has not improved for over 50 years. And they want to force those standards.
We have to get back to this whole kicking people off the program.
Sure.
I'm actually I'm a little shocked by this because normally if you're making major changes or major reforms at the legislature and you know it's going to impact people directly, heck, even with taxes or anything else, normally what's done is there's usually some sort of grandfather clause or exemption made for people that are already doing something so that they're not impacted by the change. They did not include any sort of grandfathering. The people in the program now, if this thing passes next year, they're going to be told, nope, you're done, you're kicked out. Yeah,
and one of the things that one of the most egregious provisions is they have income caps. So they say if you're in a family that owns, I believe it's $150,000 or more, you're done, you're out of the program. Now,
automatically.
That fails to take into consideration, you know, dual income parents. So you might have a nurse and a firefighter who are, you know, middle class.
Wait, so this
struggling.
isn't an individual income, it's household
income.
Do they know what the median average salary is in the Maricopa County area? I think it's around $75,000.
Yeah.
So if you're married and both of those individuals make the median salary,
your kid's done.
And let's say you have 3 kids.
Right.
3 kids.
Yeah.
It's $7,400. So you're basically sticking that family with about a $20,000 increase or hit if they want to stay in the program, or they have to get kicked out and get put back in a district school where it's going to cost taxpayers
almost double.
$15,000 a pop, $16,000 a pop.
Yeah, I think we looked at
I need to do some math here, but
$16,000.
How is that a good deal for taxpayers?
It's a terrible deal for taxpayers and anyone who has a basic understanding of economics. And these aren't even like our numbers. Like if you don't trust Goldwater, that's fine. This is coming from like the Treasurer's Office, JLBC, which is a nonpartisan budget portion of the legislature. The Auditor General's reports, like these are their numbers.
Well, what about the private schools? Okay, so this has been going on. The expansion happened 4 years ago, right? So this isn't like something new. It isn't like something just enrolled now and it's going to be a change. There might be parents that have been in this for years, but now you have private schools that now for years have operated now with parents coming in using ESAs to attend their private schools. And this could not only potentially regulate them directly, which I don't think private schools are. They're not regulated currently by the government.
No. And I think that what you would see is private schools would probably just stop taking kids on the ESA program.
Well, I could see how it'd be hugely disruptive because if you have, let's say it's even 10% of the kids that are taking an ESA, they lose those. Let's say it's a portion of those, half of them lose their ESAs. That'll destroy for many of these private schools, I would imagine, their entire operations as far as what they can fund and everything else. It'll disrupt the kids even that don't have an ESA, I would imagine, attending the school. So,
and, that's another point that we haven't been hearing this as much. But, when we were first looking at doing universal expansion, people who didn't want, school choice options were saying, well, if you do this, then this is just a cash grab for the private schools, and they're just going to raise their tuitions to, get as much of these ESA dollars as they can. We really haven't seen that happen. It's, some of them have had gradual increases for inflation, but we didn't see this automatic jump of, schools going all the way up to the top of this. So that's just, it's not happening. And we saw previously too, a lot of private schools who, if the ESA didn't cover the total tuition amount, working with parents, getting them grants, getting them scholarship, waiving some of the fees for them.
I could only imagine if somebody ran a bill at the legislature or tried to put something on the ballot that said that a school district or a traditional district school, that if this passes, a portion, you'll no longer get funding for a portion of your kids at your school. Yeah. They would be unglued.
Yeah.
Unglued.
Yeah.
And there's no way anything like that would ever pass at the legislature because everybody would see the unfairness in that and would, at a minimum, make sure that whatever they're trying to do, that those schools are protected from that hit and that shortfall. But that's not happening here. They're just cutting it off. We're talking could be 50,000 kids tossed out of the program, impacting private schools, all the downstream impacts.
Yeah. It's, in the way that they drafted it, it's addressing, it's specifically in the new statute that is, the universal expansion. So, we've talked to families. Obviously, families have, been using universal for several years now. And the thought of having to take their kid out of the school that they've, now been used to, that they've grown into, that's been successful, and uproot them into, some of these parents are like, we're in a C-rated district. We don't want to send our kid back. What are the options? And that's I think for parents, it's really scary to them. This is not politics. And, when we've polled school choice, school choice is utilized by people across the aisle. Our governor, Katie Hobbs, went to a private school. School choice is something that to us is nonpartisan. And for these families, this is about their livelihoods. And to have, this out-of-state union and this
who's
local
funding
group,
this initiative? We have this initiative coming to the street. They're paying for the signatures. Who's paying for this?
Well, we've seen so far Save Our Schools has partnered with the Arizona chapter of the National Teachers Association. So that's where we assume the unions. It's the unions. And then they get funding from the national NEA. So it's out-of-state unions. Once again, we see this in Arizona, not just in education, but sadly in a lot of areas, out-of-state unions that don't live here, buying their way onto our ballot and implementing terrible, terrible policy that we are then stuck with.
Well, so next steps. Where does these parents, the schools, everybody that's going to be impacted or potentially impacted by this initiative that they're now on the streets trying to collect signatures on, what are the next steps? What can be done related to this to counteract this type of measure from not just even qualifying for the ballot, but potentially passing if it makes it there?
Yeah, it's definitely an all hands on deck. If people are interested, they can go to azlovesesas.com. That has resources, explanations about what's been going on. If you are out and about and you see someone collecting signatures, we always tell people, decline to sign, explain this to your friends. The media is obviously, galvanized on the left and has become their political puppet here. So I even sometimes have people come up to me and they know what I do and they say, hey, I heard this thing about this program that has all this fraud. And No. Taking the time to stop and correct them and say that's actually not accurate. But we plan, for the Goldwater's portion, we will fight this every step of the way. If there are legal challenges to be made with the signatures they submit, we will be there. If there's anything else, that's problematic with the language, we have stood by Arizona parents for decades, and we will continue to do so. And we stand by the ESA program 100%.
That's great to hear. Now, what was that website again that you said? azlovesesas.com. And then they can also, of course, visit goldwaterinstitute.org for more information about what we're doing. Jenna, thank you so much for joining us today, giving us an update on what's happening in this ESA fight, providing information that will be very helpful to everyone wanting to educate their neighbors, friends, fellow voters out there in case this thing does make the ballot on this potential ESA initiative. I do think that, again, the biggest problem with their measure is going to be this impact on these existing kids and just tossing them off the program. Just totally devastating. So thanks again, Jenna, for joining us today. To everyone listening, thank you again for joining us here in the State Room, a podcast dedicated to discussing the key issues and events that will define the future of our state and keeping Arizona free. Thank you again for joining us.